Okay, good morning everyone on the 20th of January and welcome to the Licensing Committee meeting. Right, first item on the agenda is declarations of interest. Do I have any? No? Okay, next item is the minutes of the last meeting. Any comments? Any questions? No? Can I have a proposer and a seconder then? Proposed by Councillor Marcus, seconded by Councillor Mumford. Thank you. Third item is urgent items. I have none. Okay, so on to part one reports. The first one is the licensing policy for the Isles of Scilly. Over to our licensing officer, Andy.
Thank you very much, Chairman. So the draft statement of licensing policy has been, or this version has been constructed around the framework that's used by Cornwall Council. So in many ways, it's pretty close to what we had last year, but the format of it, for one, is different. So we're happier in that respect. So it's, I mean, the amount of cooperation that we have now with a lot of the officers at Cornwall around licensing and things, it obviously makes, we think, for a smoother cooperation process, if you like, if our policies are structured in the same way, more or less. I'll just read from the legal implications aspect of the report here, as it might clear up a couple of other things, because one of the other issues, or one of the other differences between the current policy and this one is around the cumulative impact area. So it is clear that the Council has failed to comply with the statutory requirements for reviewing its CIA. The Council must consult with those set out in Section 5.3 of the 2003 Act when reviewing its policy, and before deciding whether it remains of the opinion as set out in its policy. The committee is asked to approve for consultation this draft statement of licensing policy. We must review that policy within 5 years. Therefore, it is important that the proposed consultation is undertaken in a timely manner so that a revised statement of licensing policy can be adopted as early as possible in 2026. So in terms of the work already done around reviewing the cumulative impact policy, obviously the consultation in the broad sense is the most important part, and we have to consult with those listed as in the Act. So far I have done some consultation, so soft consultation with some of the persons listed in paragraph 13 of the report. So that would include the Chief Superintendent of Devon and Cornwall Police, the local policing team for the Isles of Scilly, the Environmental Health Officer for the Isles of Scilly, the Director of Public Health for the Isles of Scilly. And as you can see in the report, I've stated that in each case, those persons have come back to us with no evidence to suggest that we should continue with the cumulative impact policy or assessment. However, that is not the totality of our consultation, so we will be running, as we say, as put out in the report, this consultation for the number of days stated. And at the end of that process, paragraph 18, we've got the timeline of events that are to follow, where the consultation will end on the 24th of February. We have to come back to Licensing Committee to consider the responses to that consultation on the 6th of March. And that's about it, Chairman, in terms of my opening remarks to this, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks Andy. Any questions?
So in terms of the consultation with with our partners, is that that's not their? Are they going to submit another response to the public consultation, or is that it? Do we get to see those responses?
Yeah, I would certainly be encouraging them to engage again, but in any case, at the end of what I have already, obviously I will share with you. But if for whatever reason they engage again and they come up with a different answer, I'd be surprised. But yeah, again, everything will get shared with you.
Okay, and in terms of, so at the moment these partners have said they don't think a cumulative impact area is appropriate for us. Is there a trigger at some point that it will become applicable for us, or?
I mean, in the future, I mean, we will obviously be revisiting this again in the future to consider whether or not we should reinstate one. I'd say that's the healthy thing to do. I think that's what we have to do in law. So, you know, it's not something you can kind of leave and just walk away from. It's something that you have to keep an eye on and review at regular intervals. If there was something of real concern that came up that necessitated for us to look at it, then we would. But then there are other mechanisms in play that can control the you know what pubs or licensed premises can and can't do in the meantime. So, you know, if environmental health or had issues around noise with the premises, you know, that there are mechanisms for environmental health to put in place to deal with that in the meantime anyway.
Thanks, Andy. I think Mark wants to come in on screen. Mark?
Thank you. Yeah, just to back up what Andy said there, it's just in terms of the law, you have to review it regularly. I believe it's every 3 years you have to review a cumulative impact policy or certainly your licensing policy. If as part of the review of your policy that it came to light that there were issues with the number of premises in a particular area that warranted the introduction of a cumulative impact area, then you would expect to see evidence from those parties that you are, or that Andy's already spoken to. But it may be that other people provide evidence as part of your consultation that make you think, actually, maybe we do need this. But generally speaking, it would be the sort of the bodies that you're consulting with as part of the consultation. Cumulative impact areas are quite interesting because they're kind of, if they're successful, you don't need them, if that makes sense. So you bring them in a particular area, they work really well, and then really you don't have any justification for keeping them. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing in a way. But also, as Andy said, there are other mechanisms you can use. So if you've got a particular premises in an area that's causing issues, you can deal with that premises without perhaps the need to bring in a sort of restriction on a whole area, if that makes sense. So it's all evidence-based, and like I say, you can find yourself in a position where the police put forward very good evidence when you consult one time saying we really need this, and you introduce it, but then when it comes up for renewal or reconsideration, they don't have that evidence anymore because it's been so successful. And then you kind of have to almost hope that those issues don't come back, and they shouldn't do really, because if you've had a successful policy, that should be okay. Yeah, so I just thought maybe it's worth making that point. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Andy, do you want to come back on that, or just your lights on? Just
No, that's great from Mark. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions, Jeff?
As we've sort of been remiss in updating policy, we're a bit behind. I know there's a lot of work going on across the authority to renew policies and update policies. Have we got the framework in place to make sure that doesn't happen again? That we're keeping to our statutory responsibilities, reviewing every 3 years?
Andy?
I don't know if Leah wants to come in here, but the same question was asked just recently at the governance committee, actually, around the policies.
Yeah, I think I asked a question.
Yeah, and one of the factors I think that's going to change going forward pretty soon is that the vacant post above us in the department is now out for advert again and set to be filled. And as part of that, there is a heavy expectation that that officer would be taking a real hands-on approach to monitoring policies, let's say. But I wasn't sure whether or not Leah wanted to add to that or not.
Yep, I can come in if the chair would like me to.
Yes, please, Leah.
Yep. So in respect of licensing policies, there are two things which are different. So First of all, we now have Andy, who is the head of licensing policy officer, which we didn't have throughout that whole period where the cumulative impact assessment and policy ought to have been reviewed. Obviously, that has been flagged as something that has been missed. So that is a key area for us, which we're remedying through undertaking this process. In terms of policies as a whole, as Andy's said, the head of policy position is currently out for advert, and part of that officer's role will be a complete overview of policies where we have regular reviews. We're looking at where policies are held, how often they ought to be reviewed, and there will be a process in place. Obviously, also members should get some assurance from the fact it was picked up as a significant governance issue in the annual governance statement, and so it's being tracked through the annual governance statement as well. So just to provide some assurance there for members. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Leah.
That's great. Thank you both.
Thanks, Councillor White. Anyone else? Okay, so we have a recommendation that members approve the draft statement of licensing policy 2026 to 2031 for the Council of the Isles of Scilly set out at Appendix B for submission to a 28-day consultation process. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Marcus. Seconded, Councillor Legg. All those in favour? Okay, that's unanimous. All right, the next item on the agenda is the street trading policy, which is with Andy again.
Thank you, Chairman. A street trading policy should give protections to both the user and to the council. This policy is designed to fully explain the extent to which traders can operate on council-owned land. It is recommended that the only sites that can be used for licensed street trading on the islands are those sites listed in the policy. We refer to them as commercial trading sites, and they are the same sites as used this year. The same sites have been recommended for the next year. The prohibited streets remain the same as in the previous policy, with the addition of Church Street and the Parade. The reasons for those additions being that, in the view of the Highways Department, those areas are unsuitable for street trading, or for safe street trading, I should say. Policy is designed to come into effect from the date it is approved at Council, which is planned for March 2026. That will then be the official starting date for the new applications, using the application forms and processes set out in this draft policy. Just as we were talking about with licensing, it must always be remembered that the public, including nearby dwellings, have built-in protections within existing legislation, and they will continue to have rights to enjoy their property or a nearby public space free from excess noise or smells, statutory nuisances. These protections remain in place under the Environment Protection Act. We did write to the existing street traders in October this year to ask their views on the current policy, not this draft policy, but on the current policy and what they think could and couldn't be improved upon. Disappointingly, we didn't get any responses. I hope that they might interact with this consultation, though. As always, their views would be very useful. But anecdotally, I haven't received any complaints or negative aspects from traders that I've spoken to throughout the year. So yeah, please consider this draft policy, and we will consult upon it, and we will be back at licensing again in March to have a look at what we got back. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Any comments, questions? Councillor White.
I was just curious what would happen if, say, with the approved sites, if one of them was inaccessible, say due to building work or something of that nature. Are there alternative sites we can offer to traders? I'm thinking particularly of the space behind the Tourist Information Centre, because I know there's a new substation going in near there. If that work means somebody can't access that site, do we have an alternative that we can offer them?
Yes. Though I'm sure you'd probably like some reassurance from the monitoring officer that we can do that. Leah, We did briefly speak about this yesterday, and there is a para within the draft policy that does allow us, in our opinion, to
Yep. So in respect of the policy before members, so it's page 27 of the policy. Do you have the policy page numbers as well as your pack numbers?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. So it's page 27 of the policy. And basically, allocation of specific pitch areas are to be determined by the head of environment, who's also with us today, and she can come in after me. Taking into account each application, the local authority reserves the right to allocate pitches in a way that they consider as suitable for the safe management of trading. That's there to cater for any scenario where you might have a fallen hedge, you might have storm damage, which is very appropriate after the events of last week. Or like you say, some national grid work being undertaken. So, Rebecca, do you want to come in from a practical point of view?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we can try to work with traders. Obviously, it has to suit their needs also. So some of them may need electrical hookup, for example, in order to trade. So we would have to take that into consideration and work with them to try and find an alternative. It might be that there isn't an alternative, but it's certainly our ambition to work with them to find a suitable alternative for them. And we just have to work with them and with the parameters around highway legislation and health and safety around the open spaces in order to make that a success. But we would have to consider sites with them.
Okay, so on this particular issue, do we have a cunning plan? I believe we do.
For the TIC, displacement potentially.
I mean, hopefully the substation works won't take very long, and it won't
No.
be an issue, but there is a potential issue there that we should
Yeah.
at least be
So
aware.
we could consider as a temporary measure Holgate Screen, because that's pretty much the only other place that I'm aware of that we could support traders with electrical hookups.
And at the moment, that would just be a temporary solution while the works were going on for the substation. I guess at some point we will have to talk about Holgate Screen and whether we want to use it as a site, whether we need planning permission, all that kind of thing. But that's not part of this street trading policy. That's not part of this consultation. But as a temporary solution, according to the current policy that's being consulted on, we're assured that we could use Holgate Screen. Is that right, Rebecca?
Yeah, obviously we have to bear in mind the World Pilot Gig Championships and the timing of all of this in regards to gigs being stored on Holgate Screen for a significant period of time before, during and after the championship. So that is the only issue with that site in terms of its use for that event. There are other issues with Holgates around there isn't any dropped curbs to enable vehicles to get on and off, so manoeuvrability could be challenging, and it's also, you know, a public space. So we would have to manage health and safety accordingly.
Okay, but they're things that can be overcome, aren't they? But I mean, longer term, then we'd look at a longer term solution if we want to use Holgate Screen as a site. But for now, we could find some temporary solutions to those, couldn't we? So, fine. Okay, thank you. I don't know who's next, Councillor Roger.
Holgate Screen's not in this, but Holgate Screen can still be used, as we've just said, as a temporary event site with individual applications for that purpose. Yes. But that sits outside the street trading policy, that's correct, yes?
Yeah, so Holgates can be hired for events of which commercial traders could be a part of. And that's separate, and that's kind of dealt with through the Environment Service and our hire of open spaces for events policy.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, any more questions? Andy, sorry.
Yeah, so Holgates isn't currently one of our prohibited sites, so that gives us a bit of leeway here as well. I think it was page 28 that Leah was on about. I think, is it section B about the application process, where allocation of specific pitch areas will be determined by the head of environment, taking into account each application. Yeah, because we're going to come back in March, if by then we will know more about the situation with the substation, and if needed, we could make a necessary amendment to this, even on a temporary basis.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Councillor Marcus?
Just in terms of timeline, I'm imagining it's the same timeline as the licensing policy in terms of consultation and approval.
Yeah, so it's coming back in March.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have one recommendation, that's members consider and approve the street trading policy for public consultation for a period of 28 days. Do I have a proposer? Yes.
Chair,
Sorry.
sorry, before you move to propose, I think Rebecca had her hand up.
Oh, okay, sorry, missed that.
Sorry, everyone. Yeah, I just wanted to raise something around the fees and charges which are proposed as part of this report, in that I would suggest that they need to be reviewed to also encompass the costs for managing the open spaces for street trading. So if members remember, the Environment Services last year had fees and charges associated with the hire of these spaces as for pop-up sites to help cover the cost of maintaining these areas. So for example, if we see increased footfall and erosion to our open spaces as a result, it would be helpful for the Open Spaces Department to receive some income to support the management of that. That's just something that I wanted to raise with you as an additional thing that hasn't been covered in these fees, as far as I can see.
Chair, if I could come in, so I think it's paragraph 18 of your report. It sets out there what the proposed revised fees are in the street trading policy, which will go out for consultation. If members, I mean, Andy can obviously come in and explain those proposed revised fees. If members are minded to go out to consultation with the revised fees as included in the policy, any additional comments such as Rebecca's or others you get through the public consultation, you can obviously consider at your next meeting before you make a decision on the final policy.
Okay.
I mean, matter for members.
So we take Rebecca's suggestion as part of the consultation and then.
Yeah, so you could do that.
Okay, that makes sense. Everyone happy with that? That's sensible. Okay, cool. So getting back to the recommendation, I think I had a proposer, Councillor Legg, yeah, and a seconder, Councillor White. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. That's carried, and that's the end of the meeting. Thank you very much, everyone. See you later.